Hi everybody, my name is Alex. I am one of the co-owners of Ritual Space. I'm a yoga teacher, I'm an Ayurvedic specialist, I am a Reiki master, an intuitive channel, and today I am talking about discomfort. This is the theme of the month for January. It's what we're talking about in our email newsletter, and it's what we're talking about here online as well. So, discomfort. We're going to talk about it from the yogic perspective, and we're going to talk about it from the perspective of Patanjali and his Yoga Sutras. The funny thing about discomfort is it's something that we like to avoid. I guess that's not that funny. It's pretty normal. We don't want to be uncomfortable. We try to avoid it. And we talk about that a little bit in the email this week. But here's the thing about what yoga and Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras have to say about avoiding discomfort. Trying to avoid discomfort creates more discomfort. And if you read the email, then you saw kind of an example of how that works. I'll briefly discuss it here. So essentially, we have a way of keeping ourselves in situations where we're already uncomfortable because we're afraid of being more uncomfortable or uncomfortable in a different way. Even if the thing that we're afraid of making us uncomfortable would actually make us happier and make our lives better, we avoid it because it's unfamiliar and we're uncomfortable with the unfamiliar. So we stay uncomfortable in order to avoid being uncomfortable. And so this is just an example of how avoiding discomfort creates more discomfort, but there are other really poignant examples of that we'll talk about later. But I'm going to back up a little bit here because I want to talk about how this is relevant to yoga and the Yoga Sutras. So as I mentioned, the Yoga Sutras talk about avoiding discomfort as a means of creating more discomfort. And so what this is actually, it's one of the 5 kleshas. And the kleshas in yoga are obstacles defined and described by Patanjali and his Yoga Sutras. These are obstacles that kind of create suffering in our lives, and they start with ignorance being the first obstacle, and then egoism, and then aversion, and then egoism, attachment, aversion, and then clinging to life. So it starts with ignorance, and ignorance, according to Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras, is the first obstacle because it's the one that kind of paves the way for the rest of the obstacles by being ignorant of who we are, of what we truly are. And so what I mean by ignorance, what Patanjali means by ignorance, is not having spiritual awareness, not being a spiritual person, not being aware of the fact that you are so much more than just a human being with a human body. That there's a depth to you that goes so far beyond the human experience, that you are a piece of something so much greater, a piece of the divine. Yoga is a spiritual practice, and spirituality is an important part of all things yoga, and according to Patanjali, it's an important way to avoid suffering. Okay, so after ignorance, the next obstacle of the kleshas is egoism. And egoism is defined as this identification of self through like the word I, through me, my experience, who I am, what I think, what I feel. That's egoism. And the Yoga Sutras and yoga in general kind of try to teach us that we're so much more than this experience of I, this experience of who I am and what I think and what I feel. There's actually a smaller, much more subtle part of us that's just observing everything. And it observes when we think about ourselves, and it observes when we experience, and it observes how we feel, and it's constantly observing. And if you think about when you're angry, you can be angry, you can be actively angry and in your experience of anger, but you can also observe, I'm angry right now. And so what yoga teaches us is that we are actually, the truth of who we are is actually more aligned with that piece of us that's observing, not that piece of us that's getting involved. And we actually have the choice to not get involved. We can observe, I am angry and I want to punch someone, but I'm not going to do that because I am not controlled by my feelings and my experiences. I can observe and I can choose how to react, how to respond, what to do. So when we identify in this egoism, we create more suffering for ourselves. When we kind of act blindly and go and do things without letting the observer come in and help us make better decisions, that's when we create more suffering for ourselves through that egoism. And then not only that, but when we create something or do something, or when we receive criticism over something and we are identifying as that thing that we created, as that thing that we did, then we're creating suffering for ourselves by now feeling that criticism is about who we are, when in reality it's not. It's just about something that we did. And that's totally okay. Okay, so the next klesha, the next obstacle, is attachment. And attachment is exactly what it sounds like. It's when we really like something and we don't want to lose it. We don't want to let it go. We want to experience it again and again, or we want to have more and more of it. And this can cause suffering, because what happens when we lose the things that we're attached to? We get sad, we get upset, we have a hard time with that. We are sad when we lose valuable things, when we lose pieces of ourselves, when we lose people that we love. And this is part of the human process, right? It's natural to have emotions and to feel sad when we lose things, and to feel sad in general. But what yoga is trying to teach us is that being overly attached to too many things can create suffering. And how can we limit our sense of attachment to the things in our lives so that we can limit our sense of suffering? I don't know if there's really much more to say about that. It's pretty straightforward. Imagine, being really, really attached to your house, and then a big storm comes and takes your house out through flooding, and the suffering that creates, right? Our entire community here in Southwest Florida just experienced that a little over a year ago now, and some of them are still experiencing it. And what the Yoga Sutras are trying to teach us is that if we just accept things as they are, if we recognize that we can still be happy and whole and complete without the things that we are attached to, we can eliminate a significant amount of suffering and discomfort that we may experience in our lives. All right, so the next obstacle on the list is aversion, which is the opposite of attachment. So that's avoiding the things that make us uncomfortable. And we already talked about that, so I'm going to skip right over this one. And then the next one after that is clinging to life, which is an instinct. It's a natural human instinct, and it's something that every single person intrinsically feels. We are attached to being alive. We're here to be alive. And so naturally we want to stay alive. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when we get overly sensitive to our fear of death, we can create excessive suffering. We are afraid of flying. We don't want to fly on an airplane and do things that could enhance our lives because we're afraid of flying, and we're afraid of dying essentially from flying. The fear of death finds its way into so many things, into so many fears, right? At the root of every fear is the fear of death. And when we are overly cautious and overly afraid or overly worried about things that are going to lead to death, we limit ourselves in our experience in life. We create more suffering. And the remedy for this is acceptance over the reality that we are limited. Our time in this world is limited, and one day we are going to die. And we have to learn how to accept that. And that's why ignorance is the number one klesha, and why spirituality and spiritual belief is the number one remedy. Because when we look at ourselves as eternal beings beyond our human experience, we can come to peace with the idea that one day we're going to die. And we can have a better, greater sense of acceptance of it, because we hold on to this idea and this hope and this belief that there's more for us after our human experience. So that is our conversation about the kleshas and what they say about discomfort, and what they say about how we deal with our discomforts. And I will also just add that in addition to spiritual practice, the number one way to work with the kleshas, to build awareness around the kleshas, is through meditation and self-awareness practices like yoga, journaling, deep conversations, watching video content like this. Anything you can do to build your awareness around the ways in which the kleshas, these obstacles, impact you and create more discomfort in your life, is a way to help eliminate that discomfort, or not eliminate it, but diminish it, right? Make it smaller, because we can't eliminate discomfort completely from the human experience, because part of the human experience is discomfort. It's part of being alive. We have to experience discomfort from time to time, and that's okay. And we just have to learn to accept it and be okay with that. And that's how we're going to get through it. All right, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I hope you found this video helpful, informative. I hope that you will come to a yoga class in the near future or visit us here at the co-working space, get a membership here, start working out of this space yourself. We would love to see you. We'd love to have you become a part of this community. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I am here as well as Jill, and we'd be happy to start a conversation with you about either becoming a member here at Ritual Space, coming to our classes, teaching classes, or, just if you're curious about any of the things discussed in today's video and in the content of this month. All right, I hope to see you all soon. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again another time.